After all the crazy events of the last season, on a night with a full moon, the members of the Shadow Garden have assembled for a meeting to discuss their plans. There's a bit of troubling news regarding funds being sent to the Lawless City. This gets Shadow's attention, and they explain further that the Lawless City is a place which is not under the jurisdiction of any one kingdom and is a giant slum where criminals and evildoers go to run rampant and uncontested, and that billionaires go to evade taxes. If something were to go down in that region, then it could spell untold disaster for the rest of the world. After that information dumped, Shadow says he can smell something brewing, causing the girls to panic about whether he is talking about them or not. But Shadow meant he can smell the scent of blood from a tragedy about to befall the kingdom, and right on cue, the clouds part to reveal a red moon. The girls recognize it as a legendary omen of catastrophe and worry that if nothing is done, then not only the Lawless City but also the kingdom will be subject to destruction. Alpha orders them to be quiet and begins to prepare a plan of attack to prevent the catastrophe, but Shadow interjects and says he will handle it alone. This statement has them worried as, if anything were to happen to him, they would be unable to support him in any way, but Shadow tells them not to worry since his power is far greater than what any catastrophe could ever defeat. His nonchalant attitude towards a legendary disaster and his way with words have all the girls in awe, so they all bow to the greatness of Shadow, and even has Epsilon is over there making a fanfic of what just happened. He is truly the greatest example of a leader, that is, if he didn't just make up every word he just said. Elsewhere in the Lawless City, two knights have just arrived at the Crimson Tower ruled by the Blood Queen, so terrifying that even the usual looters are too scared to go anywhere near that thing. They are about to enter the castle, but they are halted by a crazy man perched atop the wall. The man tells them that they are not authorized to go through the gates since the only ones allowed are the servants of the queen, guests, and powerful warriors. The two knights laugh amongst themselves and declare that they are powerful warriors here to hunt the Blood Queen. But their statement causes the man to burst out in laughter as well, because he would never have believed there was someone even more foolish than him. So much so to think that hunting the Blood Queen was a good idea when you likely won't be leaving in one piece. He was once like them, careless and overconfident. He challenged the Blood Queen and lost an arm as well as his freedom, and now is reduced to nothing more than a guard dog for her gate and is tasked with cutting up fools like them. He says he was once called the White Devil, and the two recognize the name as one belonging to a dangerous criminal with a huge bounty on his head, but his glory days are over, and now the only joy he gets is from ripping unfortunate souls that wander to the castle apart. The next day, Sid is being dragged around on the ground and marveling that the Lawless City is even more of a dump than he had originally thought it would be. The one dragging him is his sister, Claire, who brought him here because she has to go to a Dark Knight Association strategy meeting. Sid was once a normal-ish high school student, but then Tuck-Kun happened, and he reincarnated here, becoming Shadow. Claire ended up winning the Bushin Festival, and to celebrate, Sid used his connections with the Gamut to take her to a fancy restaurant to celebrate. Claire then told Sid that she will be going to the Lawless City soon and drag him off with her. Though she may seem a bit mean-spirited for dragging her brother across the floor, she is doing it for his own good, because with him here, she can bulk up his connections and get him a good government job. Claire gets stopped by a salesman trying to sell her some slaves, but she isn't interested and drags Sid away. He complains that she keeps dragging him everywhere, but she says she is only doing it because if she doesn't, then Sid will get lost. He denies it, but he indeed gets lost. While he is standing around, a dude tries to pickpocket him, but Sid is too quick for that and gets his wallet back immediately, along with the thief's wallet. He walks past an alleyway and notices that there are some people in there beating up a ghoul for fun, though he has no reason to care whatsoever. Ghouls apparently have a lot of health, so around here the people use them as their personal punching bags to take their anger out on. All of a sudden, the moon turns red once more and a pulse of magical energy is felt across the land and causes the ghoul to rise up and punch one guy through the stomach and bite another in the neck. There is a rumor that when a ghoul bites a person, they turn into a ghoul as well, and it turns out to be true. Sid contemplates what he is going to do, because if he leaves these guys alive, they will only keep multiplying as the night goes on. He wants to keep his side character persona going, so he considers just running away, but he also thinks it will be fun to be in a zombie apocalypse, so his psychopath tendencies kick in, and he plans to let the infection spread a bit to make things a little more interesting. However, there is a girl behind him who notices the ghouls, and she's not a psychopath, so she kills them immediately to save the city from the infection. She introduces herself as Mary, ancient vampire hunter, and tells Sid to run if he values his life, because she assumes that he is just an ordinary person. She then says the frenzy has already begun and jumps into the sky to some other place. All the while, Sid is left there with his heart pounding, because this situation is the kind of insane thing he loves and it has him all excited. Meanwhile, Claire has just realized that Sid has gone missing and is pissed about it. Just then, a man in the neighboring room runs out naked while being chased by a female ghoul and begging for his life, so Claire just kicks her head off and asks the guy if he had happened to see where Sid ran off to. The guy doesn't know anything, so she heads out to look for him. I just wanted to take a moment to point out that that girl didn't turn into a ghoul because of the moon. She was already one before the red moon magic. Do with that information what you will. Anyway, elsewhere in the city, Sid's friends have just arrived in the red light district, and they are completely pumped and excited for what is to come. The Academy will never be able to find them here, so they are free to do what they want without fear of being expelled. Plus, even after summer break ended, they still didn't manage to lose their virginity, so they are going to make sure they lose it today. However, they get knocked down by some ghouls behind them, and something tells me they are not going to get to go through with their plans today. In one of the buildings, there is a girl lying naked on the bed, wallowing in self-pity of the life decisions that led her here, but her wallowing is interrupted by the screams of the people below who are being killed by the ghouls. Then one ghoul walks into the room and tries to eat her, but just when her life begins to flash before her eyes, Shadow bursts in and dices it to pieces before saying, "Run if you value your life, the frenzy has begun." That sounds familiar for some reason. Shadow stole Mary's flow, word for word, and is making it look even cooler. The girl asks him to wait and wants to know his name, so he tells her he is Shadow and disappears into nothing. Soon after, a girl comes looking for Marie to see if she is safe and finds the mess from the ghoul. She asks what could have possibly happened here, and she says a man named Shadow just saved her. With all the craziness going on, she feels like this is a good time to get out of this city, so she takes all the money she saved and prepares to run away, while her friend asks if she is really serious about breaking her contract and leaving, because it's not going to be pretty if she gets found. However, Marie is determined to no longer waste her life here. Back to Claire, she has just found a body which she believes to be Sid, and she is crying her eyes out because she thinks it is her fault for bringing him here in the first place. However, Mary happens to be passing by and points out that that corpse looks nothing like the description that Claire was giving of Sid earlier, at which point Claire realizes that she has been humming a random corpse this whole time. She asks Mary if she knows where Sid is, and Mary says she saw two people who matched the description of Sid, so Claire asks for the information of both. Mary saw the first one smiling while being faced with a ghoul, and Claire is convinced that that can't possibly have been Sid, since from her perspective, he isn't the kind of person to smile in the face of danger, so Mary tells her about the second person who happens to have been kidnapped and taken to the Crimson Castle. Claire believes Sid has been kidnapped by the vampire to be used as a sacrifice to the Blood Queen. The Blood Queen has been asleep for 1,000 years, so the vampires plan to use the power of the Red Moon and his sacrifice to awaken her. Now, since Claire is going to the tower to save Sid, and Mary is going there to slay the Blood Queen, their goals align and they cut through the horde of ghouls together to get to the castle. Meanwhile, Shadow is still going all around the city and saving people just so he can use that sick line that he stole from Mary. The Lord of the Crimson Tower believes everything is going according to plan. However, he is informed that there is some resistance against the ghouls, which was to be expected. He had already anticipated the Yukima of the White Tower and Juggernaut of the Black Tower, but he is informed that there is one other person killing ghouls, and that person is Shadow, who has just made another edit-worthy entrance. The White Devil is sitting up on his perch, cowering in fear because he knows how powerful both Yukima and Juggernaut are, so even though they are trying to get into the Crimson Tower, he doesn't have the guts to try and stop them. As Shadow introduces himself to them, Juggernaut and Yukina recognize him from the Shadow Garden's exploits back in Midgar, and Juggernaut respects him for causing so much trouble to the priests. Juggernaut decides it is no longer worth continuing his clash with Yukima, so he busts down a wall of the Crimson Tower behind him and prepares to continue onwards to slay more ghouls. But then Shadow drops that one-liner again that the frenzy has already begun. Yukima asks if he is referring to the current ghoul situation that is going on right now, but he never actually figured out the meaning of what he was saying and just thought it was a cool phrase, so he doesn't answer the question. Luckily, Juggernaut chimes in and mentions that he has heard of the legend of the Red Moon and says the three kingdoms will meet their ruin once it is in the sky. However, he's not too worried about it and just thinks it will be a good challenge for once. Yukima also decides to put a hold on fighting amongst themselves and thanks Shadow because he apparently saved some of her girls earlier, so she would like to keep their relationship as friendly as possible. They all walk into the Crimson Tower together, and White Devil is still not even thinking about interfering with them. But as he sees Shadow walking in, due to Shadow's skill with hiding his power, he assumes that Shadow must be weaker than him and therefore a good target. Bad call, dude. He leaps into the air to attack Shadow, but before he even hits the ground, he is diced to pieces and left looking at Shadow's feet as he once again spams the one-liner, "The frenzy has begun," as he walks into the tower. Inside the tower, Beta has already infiltrated and was gathering information from the library when all of a sudden, some noise is heard and both Claire and Mary come crashing in. They are at least glad they made it inside the tower, but to their attention is then drawn to Beta, who is still casually reading a book. Beta was meant to kill all witnesses as soon as possible, but since said witness is Sid's sister, she can't exactly do that, so she tells them that she has no interest in fighting them. And Mary rightly deduces that it would be better to not challenge the mysterious cloaked girl in the deadly tower, especially since she is not alone. Beta introduces herself as part of Shadow Garden and explains that she is here for some research into cursed possession, and to that end, she was hoping to be able to acquire some progenitor vampire blood. Mary asks what vampires have to do with cursed possession, and Beta explains that when you trace it back to its origin, the possessed and vampires are the same. So to test that hypothesis, they would like to get some blood samples from the Blood Queen. Mary gets angry at the notion that vampires are the same as the possessed, but Beta points out the irony of a vampire hunter being angry on behalf of a vampire. Beta tells them that she will stay out of their way and not interfere in any of their plans, but in return, she expects them to do the same for her and not interfere in any of their business. Claire agrees that doing so would be for the best and tells Mary they should hurry up and leave, otherwise they won't be able to save Sid in time. Hearing this, Rose, who is also there, panics and is about to ask if Sid is alright because she is yet to learn that Sid is actually Shadow, but gets told to stand down. Claire ignores the outburst and tells them to make sure to stay out of her way before walking out of the library. As Claire and Mary go through the tower, they encounter a vampire along the way and are forced to deal with it by beheading, and then piercing it through the heart. Vampires may be immortal, but they will still die if their heart is destroyed. Mary also mentioned that vampires also don't do too well in sunlight, which convinces Claire that Mary is an actual vampire hunter, considering that she knows her stuff. Mary has a grim expression on her face as she tells Claire that they should keep moving, and Claire follows, but is starting to grow a little suspicious of Mary. She can tell that Mary is hiding something from her, and earlier, it almost seemed like Mary was taking the vampire's side. Claire asks Mary what she is really after, and Mary only says that she is after the Blood Queen. So Claire asks her to clarify that she intends to slay the Queen. Mary has grown annoyed with all the questioning and tells Claire that they both have their own secrets and there is no reason to pry into each other's personal motivations. Soon after their discussion about boundaries, they feel the ground shake, and through a wall, Juggernaut crashes his way in while fighting a vampire. He then stomps out the vampire's chest, crushing its heart in the process and killing it. He has grown bored since although vampires are mostly immortal, they are still proving to be much weaker than he would have liked. Nonetheless, he still has to find the Blood Queen, so the generic vampire squad over there are going to have a hell of a bad time with him until he finds her. Claire and Mary both witness the display of the Juggernaut's great power, and Mary recognizes him as the leader of the Black Tower. They watch as he casually punches through the chest of the third strongest vampire in the tower and has two other vampires in a heap at his feet. Juggernaut rose to the top as one of the strongest people in the city with sheer overwhelming violence, so Mary suggests that it would be better for them to just wait until he is gone so that they don't have to fight him. But it was already too late to hide because once the Juggernaut gets a whiff of a good battle, he's going to come knocking. Juggernaut believes they are vampires, so he punches Claire across the face and sends her through the floor, while he also slashes Mary across the stomach and sends her into a wall. Juggernaut is disappointed that they didn't put up much of a fight, but he gets stabbed in the leg by Claire, who has just climbed back up from the hole. Juggernaut praises her for being tough, as most of the people he fights usually go down after just one punch, yet she is still standing and able to fight. He tries to slash her, but she backs off and returns to Mary's side. However, Mary's condition is not looking very compatible with life, so Claire fears that she won't be able to last much longer. She tries to use a healing spell on Mary to stabilize her condition, but Mary says it's alright, she just needs something else to help her heal. So she pulls Claire in and gives her a kiss. Claire pulls back out of embarrassment, but Mary has taken some of the blood that was in Claire's mouth after getting punched and drinks it. She then begins to glow red and heals herself, pointing to one conclusion: Mary is a vampire. She gets up and launches some blood spear attacks at Juggernaut, but while he finds this fight to be much more fun than before, he is still much stronger than her, and Mary blames her lack of strength on the fact that she hasn't drank blood in so long. Juggernaut speed blitzes them and is about to slice Claire in half, and though she can see it coming, she's unable to do anything to block the strike, so she waits for death. However, before the strike can land, Shadow shows up and steps on Juggernaut's sword before kicking him out of the tower, leaving Juggernaut questioning why Shadow would do something like this. Mary and Claire are now saved, but Shadow wastes no time in using the one-liner again any chance he gets and tells them that the frenzy has begun before disappearing. After he is gone, Mary recalls that she had heard that the church had named Shadow as one of their enemies, and Claire wonders why he would come here to help them. She asks Mary if she is actually a vampire, and she confirms it, and since her secret has been exposed, she will tell Claire everything that there is to tell about her. who she is, why she is here, and the truth about the Blood Queen. 1,000 years ago, it was the golden age for vampires, and they would dominate humans while draining them of their blood and viewing the whole thing as a game. But that time of superiority did not last forever, as once the humans had learned of the vampires' weaknesses, they were quickly hunted down by the humans and brought to the brink of extinction. During that time, the Blood Queen Elizabeth was living among the humans as the ruler of a small fiefdom, so she wished to live among them in harmony and gave up drinking blood altogether. And as her loyal subjects, Mary and the others under Elizabeth quit drinking blood as well. As a result, the vampires that gave up drinking blood lost their powers over time, but they also gained other things in return, such as the ability to go out during the daytime and the complete loss of their bloodlust. However, though the subjects were adjusting to their new bloodless lives quite well, the queen herself still possessed the maddening urge to drink blood, no matter how much she tried to prevent it, and she was still vulnerable to the sunlight. Yet despite not losing her vampire urges, she still wishes to create a place where humans and vampires can live in harmony, and that was what happened for a while. But then one night, the red moon rose in the night sky and gave vampires tremendous power. Elizabeth was able to hold out at first, but then Crimson gave her a single drop of blood, and just like a heroin addict, she relapsed and went on a frenzy throughout her fiefdom. Her rampage lasted for 3 days and 3 nights before she was finally able to regain control of herself and realize what she had just done. Elizabeth decided that this tragedy must never occur again, so she killed herself and instructed her servants to scatter her ashes in the ocean so that she may never be revived again. However, before Mary could carry out Elizabeth's wishes, Crimson took her body from her and plans to revive her against her will. Claire also reveals that she believes that she may be possessed, which is the reason she was so insistent on bringing Sid all the way out here, because she wanted to help him achieve something before she becomes a monster. After sharing their secrets, the two now have a better understanding of each other, and Mary promises to help Claire rescue her brother. Meanwhile, her brother is busy plundering the vampire treasury. After he is done plundering, he heads up top where Crimson has just inserted the Blood Queen's heart into the sacrifice. Shadow came up here expecting a boss battle, but if there is no significant challenge here, then he's going to go back to the treasure room and loot some more of the sweet, sweet gold. But as he walks away, we can see a crimson flower bloom from the smoke. Later, Mary and Claire arrive at the top as well and find the sacrifice's head, and Claire is relieved that the disembodied head is some nameless nobody, while Mary is wondering what happened to the ceremony. But before she can realize what is about to happen, it is too late and Claire gets her heart impaled. And in my professional opinion, it's going to take more than an ice pack to fix that. Mary looks over to the flower and watches as the petals peel back to reveal Elizabeth has been revived and she is looking for a midnight snack, so she pulls Claire closer to her and starts to take a bite out of her neck. However, with Claire being Sid's sister, Shadow Garden isn't just going to let her die in a situation like this. So they come out in full force and combo attack her to rescue Claire and then stab her head to finish it off. They check on Claire's vitals and she is somehow still breathing, which is impressive considering she just lost a heart and a lung to the tentacle. They evaluate the situation and realize that they won't be able to escape so easily since Elizabeth is healing herself from the wounds that she sustained. However, since Shadow is not doing anything about this, then he must have more pressing matters to attend to, so they need to rise to the challenge here. 3 of them rush forward and slash at her, but they get caught and stopped in their tracks. Meanwhile, Beta attacks and slices off Elizabeth's arms before causing an explosion. Mary watches all this and admits that Shadow Garden is strong, but they stand no chance against Elizabeth for one simple reason. She is not a morning person. And that means 2 things. 1, she's been half asleep this entire time, and 2, once she wakes up, she's gonna be grumpy as hell. With all the power she is emanating, even Kitsune is being cautious with her actions now. But Juggernaut, he is still the same old brute and runs up the wall to attack Elizabeth because he thinks it would be fun. But after his punch lands, he realizes that it may not be so fun anymore and gets flung across the roof and into some rubble. Elizabeth then begins her attack and shit is about to get real. The members of Shadow Garden try to use their slime shields to defend Claire from the incoming rain of spikes, but they are unable to hold up and are left impaled and bleeding. And Juggernaut over here got the worst of it. Beta analyzes the situation and realizes that they are royally fucked. That one attack nearly took all of them out, yet Elizabeth is over there looking fresh as a daisy with no signs of fatigue. And on top of that, she is taking their blood to make herself even more powerful. Beta orders Rose to take Claire and get the hell out of here because they're not prepared for this boss battle. But as she pulls out a blade to buy Rose some time, she is afflicted with possession by Elizabeth's gaze, and all the members of Shadow Garden who were once cured by Shadow are now being reverted. And Claire is no exception to this, as she is also being deformed in quite painful fashion. After all her writhing in pain, she suddenly wakes up in a bed in a room which clearly indicates that she is dreaming. Aurora is in the chair next to her. playing the role of doctor, and tells Claire that she has been worrying all this time about being possessed, but that guy had cured her of it long ago. Claire still doesn't realize that she is talking about Sid, so she asks her to explain what she means. Aurora continues to explain in a long-winded exposition dump, but the gist of it is that the blood of the possessed and that of the progenitor vampires are two sides of the same coin, and those two types of blood are currently trying to adapt within her body, but she isn't able to control them. Luckily, the Witch of Calamity is here to help, but she's only doing so because Claire is related to Sid. Aurora takes control of Claire's body, shocking everyone and also healing the missing heart and chest hole. Beta asks what happened to Claire, but Aurora reassures her that Claire is still alive and well in the body. She was just borrowing it for a bit and using magic to make it look a bit more like her original body, including her original assets that make Beta a bit jealous. She then turns to Elizabeth and is ready to face her. Elizabeth tries the blood spike attacks again, but Aurora literally invented that move, so she's way better at it and takes control of the blood. She then fires blood back at her, causing a series of explosions in the sky. And finally, to finish her off, she's about to rip off Sid's move and go all nuclear in this bitch. But Claire's body is unable to handle the strain and her hand cuts open. She really wanted to try it out at least once, but this is fine too. She wasn't really trying to defeat Elizabeth. She just wanted to buy time for Shadow to arrive on scene, and right on cue. He arrives with his literally blinged out cape. The dude is literally wearing money. Elizabeth recognizes him as a threat, and maybe the fact that he looted her entire treasury, and immediately goes after him with her blood spike. But Shadow is easily able to counter them all with his slime, and is in an equal exchange of blows with her. This display leaves all the others here in absolute disbelief at the power that he is displaying, but Beta is confused as to why he would bother to even engage in an exchange of blows with her if he could easily just destroy her since she is within his range. But then she notices that Shadow is simultaneously shielding them from the rain of blood. Her heart skips a beat as she believes Shadow is protecting them because they are helpless against her due to the possession. And his next statement affirms her conclusion when he says it doesn't matter the weight of the load, he can afford to lose a single one. She is touched by how much Shadow cares for her, but dear viewers, by now you can probably tell that he isn't talking about them. Sure, he is protecting them, but what he really cares about is the gold in his suit that is being turned into dust from the attacks that Elizabeth is landing on him. Beta cheers him on to win the fight against her, but all he is hearing is the cha-ching of his money being destroyed. As one of the coins is shattered right before him, he has finally had enough and Flash steps into the air and right in front of Elizabeth's face. They both draw their weapons and begin fighting in a spectacular light show. It is certainly a wonder to behold, but Shadow tells her that this battle has gone on long enough, and Elizabeth, finally in a state of calm, asks for Shadow's name. In response to this, his magic fills the air, and he says the famous words, "I am Recovery Atomic." That's a new one. And as he unleashes it, there's far less destruction than the previous ones, also healing all the people in the city of their zombification. After all is said and done, Claire is still alive and Elizabeth has been slain, so the Shadow Garden returned to base. On the side of Juggernaut, he was also healed and has use of his foot again, and he thinks to himself how it might be fun to face off against them sometime. This eventful trip comes to an end, and the people who came here are leaving disappointed. But Stig got all that he wanted cause he is now loaded with cash. He and Claire depart from the city with the train, and Claire is visibly bothered by the events that took place in this city, and the epiphany that her blood possesses special powers and she may have some great destiny to fulfill here. She is worried, so Sid plays the role of a supportive brother and tells her that everything will be fine since he knows she is capable of doing anything she sets her mind to. Claire falls asleep and Sid thinks about how there was only 500 gold coins left in that treasury, so he can't use it to fund himself for the rest of his life. But there are still 2 towers left standing in the lawless city, so if he ever runs out of money, he can always come back and rob one of those. Back in Midgar, a train transporting the goods of Gamma's company has been stopped by a group of bandits on the road, and the girls inside look like they are scared for their life as the bandits explain that their business has been growing too quickly in recent months, and as he attacks them, he also says that their success has upset the man in charge of all the trading in Midgar, Garter. However, one of the girls says Garter is meant to be a respectable man who is kind and a devoted follower of the church, but the bandit says it's usually the most innocent-looking people that have the nastiest personalities. You may see them as a good person, but next thing you know, they are promoting NFTs, so they should take this as a lesson in judging people. But as one of the girls changes her tone to one of annoyance instead of fear, the bandits realize that there is a different lesson to be learned here. Behind him, Alpha and the other members of the Shadow Garden appear, and as he recognizes them, he slowly realizes just how fucked he truly is. They were already aware of Garter's ill intentions towards them, so they just waited for him to make a move. And since they decided to aid him in his violent actions against them, they have no sympathy towards them. After the massacre has been completed, they talk about how they have considerably reduced the numbers of the ranks of the criminal underworld. With this, the leaders will have to take action against the threat, and that will eventually lead them to the cult. Later in the afternoon, Sid is having lunch with his friends at a diner while they are showing off their new drip. This is the new Supreme on the streets, and they are sure all the girls will come running to them once they hit the road in these. Sid just sits there and listens while he thinks about how the whole clothing campaign is probably the work of Ida after she used his knowledge of Earth to recreate them here. He now realizes that all the girls have been using his knowledge to make a boatload of money, and considering he thinks of Shadow Garden as a game, he is going to take back the profits that should be his. So that night he dons a new mask as his super elite secret agent John Smith. He goes to meet with Kitsune, who is in town and has been working with him recently. She tells him that Garter had recently called a meeting of the major corporate alliance relating to something about crushing Gamma's business. However, their plan remains the same regardless. While Gamma's company and the major corporate alliance fight against each other, he and Kitsune will swoop in and take everything that both sides have. But to get to that point, Shadow is going to have to play his part, but she warns him to be careful before he leaves. Close to Garter is a man called the Sword Devil who rose to the top of the criminal underworld incredibly quickly thanks to his unbeatable skill with his sword. A sword that she knows all too well as it has left a scar on her chest, so she says to leave Gatton the Sword Devil for her to fight. The next day, Sid's friends take him to a sale in Town Square, but just like on Black Friday, they are getting backhanded for the deals. Sid finally has a good grasp on why Gamma's company Mitsubishi is being targeted so much. They created several products that were exclusive to them and had no concern for local distributors. With this many enemies, the Mitsubishi company won't be lasting much longer. All this being said while his friends are still receiving the Black Friday treatment. So his plan here is to let the major corporations destroy Mitsubishi and then destroy all those major corporations. And then with all the capital that he would have gained from, he would create a new organization and bring the girls and his upper management and change the name of the company. While his friends are paying for the stuff they managed to get, Sid notices that the bills they are using are different from the ones that he usually sees. His friends explain that a new kind of bill was released today, which was the reason for the sale. The previous bills were from the Mitsubishi Bank, and Sid is amazed that they were able to make even a bank. He remembers telling them some stuff about a banking and credit documentary that he saw once, but he didn't know much information about it, so he ended the conversation quickly. And they took that little information which he was able to give them and made an entire bank from it, and even issuing a paper currency. But then Sid realizes something. Mitsubishi's notes use multicolor print, detail design, and will place watermarks, while the new one only uses one color. It is much simpler. And you know what that means, right? Time for some bank fraud. Later, he's having a bowl of udon in a street stand as an ordinary person. An ordinary person with a furry best friend. He asks Delta what she's doing here, and while she climbs on his head, she explains that she came to the capital because she was hunting and asks Sid if he wants to go hunting with her. He asks her what she's been hunting, and she tells him that Alpha told her to hunt bandits in the area, once again asking him to go hunting with her. Normally, he'd be happy to go with her since he loves hunting bandits too, but right now he's got a lot of stuff to deal with, so he tells her he is busy, but she really wants to go hunting. Sid reminds her that she had another reason for coming to the capital, and she suddenly remembers that she was supposed to go report to Alpha, and she will probably be really mad at her now, but she still wants to go hunting. And when she looks at Sid like that, he can't help but give in to her. Through the night and into the morning, they hunt bandits through the sewers and the streets. Delta is really enjoying herself, but that leaves no fun left for Shadow. Though he still has fun collecting the money from the bandits, Delta is about to finish off the last guy when he suddenly says they are related, and after a quick sniff, she can tell that he is actually her brother, but she doesn't care and still kills him anyway. Shadow asks if she is really okay with killing her brother, but she tells him that he is all she needs, and in fact he should go to her tribe and challenge her father so he can become the chief of the tribe. Then he can commence the baby making with her, but he says that's not going to happen. Meanwhile, Gatton has just received news of the desecration of several of their bandit units, so he tells Garter to get the Clovers to attack all the Mitsubishi trade centers and steal their trade secrets. At the Mitsubishi headquarters, Alpha is receiving a report on the state of their current feud with the major corporate alliance. They have thus far managed to minimize the damage done to their supply convoys due to the bandits the alliance sends after them, and they are also dominating the market with their goods as the alliance can only attempt to mimic the quality of Mitsubishi with their off-brand items and their water Jordans. Everything is going as they had expected, but Alpha reminds them that they must be careful not to do anything that would prove a connection between Mitsubishi and Shadow Garden, as it would be disastrous for the image of the company. Just then, The door opens and one of the workers informs Alpha that there is an impatient guest that needs to be taken care of downstairs. She isn't all that surprised, as beast people are often very impatient, so she wants to send Nu out to go handle the situation. However, Gamma says she wants to go handle it instead. Alpha doesn't think it is a good idea, but if she wants to do it, she is free to do so. However, for protection, she assigns 2 members to go with her, and Gamma leaves with the look of, "I'm gonna make Mama proud." The intruders have entered the building and think it was a little too easy to get in here as there are no guards at all, but are soon confronted by Gamma and the others. They emerge from the darkness and the other 2 immediately attack 2 of the intruders, leaving the leader for Gamma to handle. The attacker doesn't see any signs of additional bodyguards, so he is sure he should be able to take down Gamma on his own. And if you remember from the first season, Gamma sucks at fighting. He leaps behind her and with near lightning-fast speed, and he chops her across the head. He'd aimed to kill her with that blow, but she just got a mild ouchie instead. And that is due to the fact that while she does indeed suck at fighting, she still has the speed and defense stats of the kind that would get you banned for hacking, so she's not an easy person to beat. She keeps spamming thrust because that is the only thing she learned how to do, and the attacker dodged easily because her attacks are simple to read. After seeing how he moves, Gamma was able to deduce the exact kind of fencing he uses and predict his next moves. But she is still only spamming one attack, so that doesn't make much of a difference. The attacker goes in for another attack, and if her defense stat wasn't so high, she would probably be dead right now. She prepares to use what Shadow had taught her to do in a fight, and we see a flashback to that moment. He had been aware of both her incredible defense and also her toddler level of coordination, so he just told her to jam her magic power into her sword and swing it really hard. That should work probably. She does exactly that, and it is doing the intended job of scaring the attacker while also holding enough power to incinerate him if it comes into contact with any part of his body. At least that is what would have happened if she made it to him, but she tripped on a rock and fell face first on the ground. She applauds his cleverness to lead her into such a well-laid-out trap, but no, that was just a regular ass rock and she fell for it on her own. At this point, the attacker is starting to realize that maybe he doesn't want to do this anymore, so he turns to get his teammates and leave, but the other 2 girls have already defeated them. Gamma gets up and is about to do her full-power sword thing again, so the guy notes the hell out of there and leaps out of the hole in the wall. But unfortunately for him, she manages to hit him. The explosion was so huge that it shook the building, and that was right around what Alpha was expecting when she sent Gamma out there. Later, Getten gets a report that the Clovers were defeated, and all the backup that they sent in have also gone quiet. Garter is worried that the people in the Alliance will start to oppose them because of their recent failure here, but Getten simply tells him to take care of it no matter what he needs to do, and Garter leaves. Getten knew the Clovers would be nowhere near the level of Knights in terms of combat capabilities, since they were all just a bunch of bandits to begin with. Ideally, he would have wanted to use some of the children of the cult, but with 2 leading members already dead, they are running low on resources. In the end, the Alliance is just a pawn to him, and he just needs them to stay in business long enough for him to accomplish his goal of attain power greater than anything this world has ever seen, because he has trauma from Sid beating him up really bad when he was still a young Shadow. Elsewhere, Sid is currently training with Alexia in the park. He parries her attacks until she eventually blows his sword away, and after that, he gives her a slow clap for a job well done. They later go to get some food, and she asks Sid what he thought of her abilities back there. He says she has definitely improved and will probably keep improving in skill and strength, but he thinks to himself what could have caused her sudden desire to grow stronger next. It usually only happens when someone changes their outlook or when they discover something new. Alexia tells him that she is doing all this training because she doesn't want to be left behind as a background character after the last incident happened, and she could do nothing but watch. Rose has gone off alone, and the kingdom of Oriana has lost its king, so she needs more power to help her friend when she is suffering. She has finally decided to move forward in life, but then life decided to move faster, so she needs to keep up. Later, Sid is sitting at a noodle bar as John Smith when this woman joins him and tells him production is complete. With a smile on his face, he says that it is time to begin. In an old abandoned mine far away from any inspections, there's money being printed by the millions and will be sent to the lawless city before being redistributed into the royal capital. John Smith meets with Kitsune to discuss the next phase of their plan, and she shows him 2 bills on a tray, one original and one which she made, asking him to see if he can spot the fake. Sid activates the RAM and bullshit go and starts saying the paper is coarser. There is bleed on the ink and the proportions are off. Kitsune takes a look at it, and it turns out that he is actually right about there being differences between the papers. However, the one of lower quality is actually the original. She asks if they should restart the production process so they can match the lower quality, but John doesn't think it will be a problem for their plan as no one will be able to tell the difference. With the supply settled, they move on to the next part of the plan where she will leave the distribution of these counterfeit bills across the country to Shadow. However, no matter what, Getten is hers alone to kill as he destroyed everything she ever loved: her mother, her village, and her Lego Millennium Falcon. Later, Shadow Garden learned about the counterfeit bills circulating around the city. The people who use those bills are unaware of the fact that they were fake, and it would seem that the Alliance is also unaware of it. Alpha instructs Gamma to make sure that they become aware before the damage becomes too noticeable, as if people were to lose faith in the authenticity of paper money, then it would hurt Mitsubishi as well. However, she soon realizes that the intention behind this counterfeiting might be entirely to create a credit collapse. She orders for the source of the bills to be found immediately as their top priority. Getten also receives news of the counterfeit circulation from Garter, as one of the workers apparently found the bill being used. He can't really tell the difference, but orders Garter to track down the source. The Alliance has already printed more bills than they are reasonably capable of insuring, and the same is likely true with the Mitsubishi Group. That is the reason the cult was also planning to make counterfeit bills to cause a market collapse and bankrupt both the Alliance and Mitsubishi. But that plan wasn't meant to go into effect until the cult had regained their gold that was mixed in with the assets of the Alliance. If they sit back and just watch as the bills go into circulation while they haven't recovered their gold, the cult could lose enormous amounts of money, so basically, they're screwed. Late into the night, 3 members of Shadow Garden have located a train containing the counterfeit bills and other stolen goods. As they prepare to infiltrate and recover the bills, the leader reminds Rose that she is not to make any decisions on her own like last time, but Rose just says okay, worry the leader. They enter the train car and are surprised to see that there are no passengers on board, but that is to be expected when the train has got illegal stuff on it. Still, it is odd that there aren't at least some guards present on the train. Just then, Rose notices a wire in front of her and warns the other two to be careful, but is already too late and they have been caught in them. Rose turns around to find John Smith watching them and charges towards him. But as this is Sid we're talking about, he easily stops her attack and has her restrained. He knew they would be the first to find out about the counterfeit, but he still hasn't finished up with his plan, so he can't have them learning any more than they already have. So he yeets them out of the train. They all hit the ground and Rose wants to charge back in, but the leader tells her to calm down because they are outmatched. You just got no diff by a guy using threads as his weapon and you really want to go back. In any case, the train has started speeding up, so they wouldn't be able to catch up to it even if they ran at this point. All they can do now is to return to base and report what happened to Gamma. The 3 return to base to give their report, and Alpha is perplexed that there is a person capable of taking down 3 of their elite numbers so easily. They start to ponder who this John Smith person may really be, and Alpha thinks it might be someone from the lawless city, but Rose has something to say. She starts saying this John Smith person is leagues above any strength they have ever encountered, and could likely even rival Alpha and the 7 Shadows in power by himself. Her teammates pin her down and drag her out of the room before she can say anything more that may make Alpha mad and leave after saying goodnight. Rose's behavior is definitely something that Alpha needs to address later, but she had also sent Zeta out to find something and takes the lack of news from her to mean that the mission is going as planned. The cult seems to be putting up quite the opposition, but she wants to end this whole war quickly so they can finally get some rest, and as for John Smith, she decides to send Delta out to deal with him. Later on, John Smith is sitting in the train and casually writing things down in his book of ideas to make me a millionaire, when he turns to look out the window and sees Delta running alongside the train and goes, "Well, I guess we're doing this now." Delta charges towards the train and smashes through the window with great force, all the while John Smith is still sitting calmly. She tries to strike him, but he is just sitting there calmly while his threads block her attacks. She managed to get past the threads and goes in for another strike, but John was one step ahead and already countered with a barrage of threads, which Delta was forced to dodge. She realized she was at a disadvantage in a confined space, so she lets out an ear-piercing scream that blows the roof off the car. John commends her for her quick thinking to get rid of the confining space. However, he has a trick up his sleeve for just the occasion and pulls all the flying pieces back onto the train, crushing Delta. He now has her trapped among the wreckage of the train car, so he walks up to her and prepares to give his cool speech about knowing that Shadow Garden would find out eventually. But as he steps closer, Delta gets a whiff of his feet and immediately recognizes him as Shadow, so she leaps up for a hug. Now that she knows it is him, John drops the act and begins acting like Sid once more. He asks why Delta had come all the way out here, and she informs him that she was sent on a mission by Alpha to hunt John Smith. But since he is John Smith, there is no way that she could ever beat him in a fight, so she needs to go report this to Alpha. However, before she can leave, John stops her and says he is currently on a super-secret mission and can have Alpha or any of the others finding out about it before he has completed his objective. She thinks it is cool and wants to join in on this secret mission, but he says it is something that only he can do. He doesn't want her to report this, but Delta is currently on a mission for Alpha and needs to report back to her or she will get mad. However, he brings up the rule he created when Shadow Garden was formed. Any mission he gives to any one of them takes priority over any other mission, even one given by Alpha, so for that reason, it should be fine for Delta to forget about Alpha's mission as long as he gives her one instead. And Alpha can't get mad about it because those are the rules. As Delta continues to straddle him, he promises to give her a reward if she completes the mission he's going to give her, and her tail begins to wag with joy. Though he has conditions as to what the reward can be, as it has to be something he is able to do and not require much effort or money. So if it meets those requirements, then he will grant any request she has. So now he has to make up a mission to keep Delta busy. So he looks out the window and tells her that if she goes in that direction, she will find the lawless city, and once she does, she should hunt a guy called Juggernaut there. With her legs still wrapped around him, she asks him again if he will really give her anything she wants if she completes the mission, and he reiterates that he will, as long as it meets the requirements. And after that, he chucks her out the window to begin her hunt. Meanwhile, Alpha receives a report from Gamma that they found evidence of an intense battle, but all they could find of Delta was this. She isn't the kind of person to abandon a mission on her own, so that leads them to only one conclusion. She must have perished in the fight. Alpha is shaken by the news, but orders for them to keep searching so they can at least find her body. Gamma also informs her that the number of counterfeit bills in circulation right now is still increasing, and at this rate, the people will begin to lose trust in the paper money and cause a credit crisis. Alpha has finally realized that this was John Smith's plan from the very beginning, and he was never trying to make money with the counterfeits, but rather was trying to take the entire market for himself after both Mitsubishi and the Alliance had collapsed. And she's enraged that she didn't see it sooner, vowing to defeat John. Meanwhile, Gatton is also getting a debriefing on the current situation of the market crisis for the cult, as they will not be able to fully recover their funds before the collapse of the market. And this one guy starts insinuating that this is all Gatton's fault, and that's how you know he won't live long. Yep, there he goes. The other guy is a bit smarter and tells Gatton exactly what he needs to know, and that the counterfeit money circulating in the kingdom is being controlled by a man named John Smith, and he is the source of all the problems they are facing. Gatton turns his attention to Garter and tells him to set up checkpoints throughout all the kingdom to monitor everything that goes in and out. Garter tries to protest that the royal family would never allow something like that to happen, but he gets a reminder of what will happen if he fails to complete his mission this time around, as Gatton chops off the head of the other person there as well. He orders Garter to find the source of those counterfeit bills no matter what he has to do or who gets in his way, and Garter can do nothing but accept the mission. Back in the castle, Iris is walking back from her training session when she suddenly bumps into Alexia, who is carrying a mountain of books. She hadn't expected to see Alexia back at the castle anytime soon, but she is here because the school library is still burnt down, so she figured it would be easier to find books on the topics she was reading up on in the royal archives. Things like law, politics, commerce, economics, and ancient linguistics. Surprising Iris with her sudden thirst for knowledge, she is questioned about whether she intends to give up the sword and become a scholar with all that reading she is doing. But that is far from the case. She is simply learning all these things for the sole purpose of knowing where to swing her sword to do the most good for the world, because you can't really bring about change while you take action randomly unless you are the MC and possess the power of plot conveniences. However, Iris has nothing to say about Alexia's newfound enlightenment and walks away. Later that night, Beta is giving a report to Shadow that the rumors of the counterfeit bills are circulating faster than ever, and at this rate, the royal family will be forced to take action before long. She also reports that the economy is collapsing and the housing prices are through the roof and crypto is down. But there is something else she needs to tell him. To take care of John Smith, they had sent out Delta to handle him, but after that, they lost all contact and haven't seen her since then. They fear that she may have been killed in the fight, and hearing this, Shadow is shocked because he thought she would have returned by now and wouldn't have imagined that the others would think she died. Beta takes his shock to be grief, but he is just confused about what Delta is doing right now. Beta continues, saying John Smith is a dangerous opponent and is far more powerful than they had anticipated, so she was hoping Shadow would personally handle the situation. However, he tells her he has other matters to attend to and gets up from his seat to leave. Before he goes, Beta reminds him of the policy of Shadow Garden about having all notes either destroyed or encrypted immediately. But while showing her his ideas book, she realizes that she can't read a single word that is written there. And it's not because Shadow's handwriting looks like my doctor's, but rather he wrote everything down using words from Earth, saying he might teach her about it someday. Later, he is on one of those trains carrying the counterfeit money and is informed that they are coming up to a checkpoint imposed by Garter. However, Shadow tells her that they should just keep going. At the tracks ahead, there is a roadblock in place to stop any trains that refuse to stop, and the two guys are just doing the job that was assigned to them. But John has no time to waste at a checkpoint and just blows straight through it. The two guys are now left with no other choice but to go into hiding because Gatton will kill them if they fail their mission. But when it comes to John, if they fuck around, they're gonna find out. John stands on the front of the train when he notices a figure standing on the tracks, and it is revealed to be Alpha. She greets him as she flies through the air and prepares to kill him. However, John is able to block her attack and counter with his own, but while fighting with Alpha, she was able to recognize his great technique and skill. Knowing that the only one capable of accomplishing something like that is Shadow, she yells at him for an answer to why he would do such a thing. He has nothing to tell her, and she asks to at least know what happened to Delta. He tells her that she was sent to a far-off place, but that doesn't really answer the question. She is aware there are things that Shadow does that she could never understand, but for him to not trust her enough to fill her in on the details of a plan which he holds such importance in, she feels like he doesn't need her anymore, so she wants to show him that she can still be useful. She unleashes a new power, and as John wraps her in threads, she vanishes into mist, appearing above him and ready to strike, but he is not surprised by it at all. Mist form allows the user to evade all attacks as a cloud of mist, but they still have to materialize if they want to land an attack of their own, and that leaves them vulnerable. He catches her blade if she mystifies herself again, and that leads to the second weakness of the technique. Mist lacks weight, so you can literally just blow the user away, which is exactly what Shadow does here, leaving Alpha on the train tracks by herself, begging him not to leave her behind. The plan so far has been a success, and Kitsune has exchanged the counterfeit banknotes for gold coins, basically emptying out the Alliance's vault. As people start to panic over their money and try to withdraw, they will run out of funds and collapse. And the same will happen with Mitsubishi, leaving them to take their money and vanish. Kitsune thanks him for all his help in bringing this plan to life, but she reminds him that Gatton is hers to kill. In the past, there were two who were set to be married to strengthen the alliance between the tribes, her and Gatton. She had admired Gatton and wholeheartedly accepted her marriage. But then one day, a war broke out and Kitsune's village was burnt to the ground with her family slaughtered. And the culprit for all of this was Gatton, who had joined the cult of Diablos and killed the villagers for not joining as well. Seeing what he had done, she tried to kill him but was too weak, resulting in him slashing her as well. But as he was about to leave, Kitsune heard the battle cry of a young Shadow on the hunt, wounding Gatton. From that day forward, Kitsune had made it her mission to take everything that Gatton holds dear and kill him. This was the end of episode 6. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to not miss the next part.